Hello and welcome to The Herd Has Spoken, a podcast brought to you by MuskOx Men's Apparel. Episode number 11, Kris Kelly, a gentleman who I like to call the MuskOx poster child because he's a Colorado native, he's an Air Force veteran, he owns a Polaris dealership in Wyoming. He also leads up an investment management firm, Legacy Ridge Capital. He was the former head at Janus Capital Management of All Energy Investing. Kris is a very accomplished guy, has a lot of thoughts about taking the long term, putting in the time to really think about decisions and really how to be smart with investments of your time, even how to select a spouse. Great episode today. I'm really excited to share this with you guys. With no further ado, my conversation with Kris Kelly. All right, Kris. So in so many ways, you are the poster child for MuskOx. You are a Colorado native. You were in the Air Force. You went to college, you went to MBA, you went and worked very successfully in the corporate world. In fact, you got to a spot where you're the head of energy or co-head of energy for Janus Investment Management, which is one of the largest, most respected investment management funds out there. And somehow, some way, you left there and have now created your own thing successfully on your own. So there's a lot to unpack here, but I want to start by rewinding to that moment where after you'd graduated from college at a respected university, but not one that's particularly well known, Regis College in Denver, you were working in a job. And my understanding is you hadn't yet gotten into business school, and you more or less had a boss or someone at the company tell you that you weren't going to get into business school and you weren't going to amount to anything. So one, I want to kind of unpack that story. I might have screwed it up a little bit. Two, I want to know how that moment in time impacted your life.
All right. Well, it's funny you bring this up because I remember you loving this story when I told it in Lead back in probably 2007 or maybe even 2006. So
Lead these things. Yeah, I know, for better or worse. So Lead, it's the leadership development program at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, where Kris and I actually met back in 2006. So anyways, yeah, please go ahead.
Yep. So it wasn't explicitly told to me that I wouldn't get into business school and wouldn't amount to anything. But, when you're fired from a job because you're trying to go to business school and amount to something, it's very implicit what they're trying to tell you. And it was fine. It was an early job. Ironically enough, about 3 weeks ago, same founder of that company called me back and tried to bring me back for about 5 times the salary I left in 2005. And unfortunately, that's not enough at this point in time, and I wouldn't do it anyways. I like kind of doing my own thing, but it was a decision I know he regrets, but somebody like me who, if Michael Jordan's on a 10 for using all these slights to fuel himself, I'm probably a 2 or a 3, but I remember these things and I use them, for better or for worse, probably for worse, to kind of drive myself. And so, I remember it clear as day. I remember when it happened, and, I'm going to feed on it probably for the next 30 or 40 years until I'm dead. So,
well, I think there's something really powerful about having that chip on your shoulder, right? In that you feel like you've got something to prove, whether it's to yourself or to someone else. And I'm curious, how do you think that has fueled you over the years? And it sounds like it's not a one slight thing for you. It's always feeling like there's some slight that, like Michael Jordan, you can find a way to derive motivation from that.
Well, I think a lot of it's when you just grow up as a middle class person, like you definitely realize that things are not owed to you. And, a lot of times when you grow up in that environment, and I don't know if you experience the same thing, but when you grow up in that environment, like you kind of grow up thinking that there are just people better than you. You know, there's people that are smarter. There's people that, you know, just have a much easier, better path. And so you're kind of born into this underdog mentality. And then when you have the opportunity, like you and I did, to go to a world-class school at the time, the number one business school in the world, and you meet a lot of these people that had uh, much better paths in life the first 25, 26 years, and you realize they ain't no better than us. Like it really just fans the flames of, okay, I am still the underdog because I didn't have all these advantages, but I'm not at a disadvantage. Like those are different things. Like maybe I was, you know, the first 15, 16 years of my life, but the playing field is level now. And now we're going to get after it, because you should have been here. I should not have been here. And so that's a difference. Like there's something different in our makeup. So the dark side of it is I'm probably up at 2 or 3 every morning and I can't get back to sleep because all I'm doing is spinning these wheels in my head on how I should be working or doing something to try and get past these people, which is the unhealthy side of that debate.
Well, one of the things I like to say is our greatest strengths are also our greatest weaknesses.
For
And,
sure.
and this feels like, you know, target hitting, it's gonna be the arrow hitting the middle of the target
Yeah.
on this one. Cause it's like, yeah, it is awesome that you're always thinking and trying to figure out a way to get better and to beat the competition. And in your world, in investment management, that's pretty black and white, right? Either
Yep.
I'm beating benchmarks or I'm not. And the
Yep.
process to get there is really gray, but you've got that constant pressure on yourself to do that. And I've got to guess that's even harder now for you to be comfortable with that and to not have that self-doubt when you're now out on your own, essentially, right? So and maybe that's a good place to start here. So Legacy Ridge Capital, investment management firm that you own, you started, and you did that after years and years at Janus, and you climbed to sort of the top of the mountain, as some people would say. You probably wouldn't put it that way, too humble to do so, but you're the co-head of all energy investing. And through different ways, you ultimately decided to go out on your own to Legacy Ridge Capital. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that journey, but also how does that make you feel differently today? I mean, do you still experience that self-doubt or that feeling like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be here that you referenced earlier?
Yeah. Well, the path to get here. So I think I've always wanted to have my own investment firm. Well, I have a partner now, but to have started my own investment firm. And so I figured that was going to be my path at some point. And I actually, I think it was early 2016, I had actually submitted my resignation um, from Janus, and I wanted to go start my own fund at that point. But my wife seemed very nervous about doing this. And you know my wife, Brad, so for her to get nervous is very out of character. And so I pulled back. They were nice enough to let me come back and rescind my resignation. But then 2 years after that, the guy I was working with, I was the assistant portfolio manager on the Contrarian fund, and he left. And I was passed over to actually get that job as the portfolio manager of that fund, which, you know, I think I would have probably enjoyed running that fund for a few years, but frankly, I was fairly indifferent between running that fund or coming to terms with the company and leaving to do my own thing once again. And once again, they were, you know, gracious enough to let me leave in the middle of a merger, which gave me some more financial flexibility. And so yeah, if my memory serves correctly, that was probably September of 2017. So I left then, and it took me 3 to 4 months to kind of set up my own fund. There's a lot of legal paperwork, a lot of process that goes with it. And so I did that, and it's still in the early stages. It's very small. There's only a couple of investors. We invest in energy, we invest in airlines, very specific niches that are extremely out of favor right now. But we don't change our stripes. We have very kind of deep core beliefs on how to invest and what to invest in. So, it's going to be a long road. As a person I consider a mentor of mine's told me, this is a marathon. So, we've got 23 miles to go in this marathon. So we're in the early stages, but it's been a lot of fun. But it's also going back to what we just talked about. It's another thing that, getting passed over for a job that I was kind of okay getting passed over for, but I think I was probably up at 2 this morning thinking about that one. So, they just keep on coming as far as the slights go, but that's okay.
So I'm just for everyone listening, what does it mean to be a contrarian investor, and what does it mean to be a highly concentrated investor?
It depends. Definitely depends on if you're taking the marketing angle or if you're taking the actual core definition. Some people like to label themselves as contrarians, and then they own a bunch of tech stocks at the top of their portfolio. For me, it's just, really the investment process starts with looking for things that nobody else wants to own. And that's just the first cut, because if nobody wants to own it, the one thing you can pretty much guarantee yourself is it's not overpriced. Because nobody's there. Nobody wants to own it. As the guy I used to work with, Dan Kozlowski, used to say, it's an empty trade. Like, there is nobody standing there wanting to buy that from you. That's a good place to start. Now, you still have to do a lot of work. You got to figure out if, there's been some companies that have gone to zero, obviously. But just the core nature of being contrarian is, you can kind of just start by looking at the chart of a stock. And if it's straight down while everything else is straight up and you're looking to buy it, you're probably pretty contrarian.
And is that isolating to you in some ways? So I'm trying to put myself in your shoes.
Yeah.
And you've sort of left the big world of investment management with larger companies. You're on your own. And now you're looking at buying things that nobody else wants. So there's probably not a lot of coverage on those. Is that ever isolating to you?
It's very isolating. And part of the reason I brought a partner on was it just got, I wouldn't say lonely, because I'm okay being lonely. It just, I knew from having, studied a lot of new businesses and a lot of startups, I knew that the odds of success for a startup are significantly higher when you have a partner, because you're responsible to somebody else. You have somebody else as a sounding board that you can speak with, that's in the trenches with you. So that's why I brought on a partner at the start of this year, because I could just see, like, while I was doing okay, not great, but I was doing okay, there was a question in my mind if I could just do this on my own, always going against the grain for the next 20 years. And the second that crept into my mind, I knew I probably needed to bring somebody else on as a sounding board, somebody else to help keep me sane.
Yeah. And one of your greatest strengths, I feel like, is you're very steady, right? You're a very even keeled guy, at least externally. I know there's a deep fire that burns inside of you, which is, allowed you to be so successful, but you are very even keel. And I have to imagine that one of the downsides of concentrated investing is when downturns can happen in that industry. And oh, by the way, it's 2020. And my understanding is you're concentrating in airlines and transportation and energy, who have had a terrible, terrible year when you look at their indices and how they're doing. And my question for you is, how are you able to hold true to your investment theses during these times when these are industries that are getting battered and bruised? And of course, your investors know this is what you're going to invest in, and you're an expert. And I think you've been really smart about that. But how do you hold tight to those beliefs? Because it's isolating. Other industries are not having so much challenge during these times. Everyone has certainly had a year, but there's a lot that's going on, and I have to imagine it's not easy to hold on tight to the resolve in your approach.
Yeah, this has been a tough year, and it's exponentially tough because we're not a long short fund. We have the ability to short stocks, but we don't, just because I personally don't like the risk reward of shorting. Not to say we will never short, but so to your
And
point,
shorting is when you are predicting that a stock's going to go, price is going to go down, and you could profit off of that.
correct. So we almost have no ability to hedge our portfolio outside of holding, cash and large amounts of cash, which we often do. But and so this year's been challenging because we were long coming into the year. We were long a little bit of airlines, mostly energy, and then obviously just got our faces ripped off by the coronavirus, like a lot of people did. But we were when you focus on such a narrow space, I think you have a much better sense of the underlying value of what you're buying. And so, end of March, early April, when the bottom was really falling out, and, like there seemed to be no bottom in sight for some of our stocks just because of liquidity reasons, we were able to buy a lot of things that, were up 5-6 fold from there. Now, we weren't able to put a ton of capital to work because we didn't have a ton of cash, but you don't have to put a lot to work if you can get 5 to 6 times your money in the course of 6 months. And so it's, again, it was a matter of being focused on what we were looking at and being nimble, and then essentially just not having a pulse. And because the fact of the matter is, if we were wrong and the world didn't pull out of this, we were going to have a lot bigger issues than losing some money. So kind of embracing the fact that there would be brighter days ahead, really allowed us to take advantage of the fear that a lot of people had, and the irrational just dumping of some of the stocks that we owned back at the end of the first quarter. But it's hard. This has been a tough year. I would actually say last year was probably even harder because performance on a relative basis was not good. And, this is like tippy top 98, 99 bubble type of environment. And so everybody now expects the stock market to go up 30% every year. So if you don't keep track with that, they think you're an idiot, which, very well could be the case, but time will tell. Those are the harder environments for me because, you get text messages from your brother congratulating himself on all these stocks that he's bought that he knows nothing about that have gone up 50%. And you have nothing to counter that with because all your stocks are flat to down. So, but that's that's also the key hint that we're darn near cycle top here on all these bubble kind of Robinhood day trader, tech stock, IPOs, SPACs, all these things that are, now popular in the lexicon, yet, weren't popular 6 to 12 months ago.
One of the things that I've always admired about you is you're a very patient guy, and you're not a lazy guy in any way. So I think a lot of people sometimes think of patience and think of sitting back and doing nothing. But you're very much someone that will work their ass off, is constantly reading, constantly trying to understand things a little bit better every single day. And I'm curious, what is your time horizon when you're looking at these investments? Because I have to imagine that's actually a pretty tough position that you're in, because you want to look in the long run. But at the end of the day, you have clients, and if their contemporaries are up 50, 70, 100%, and you're down 20, down 30, or flat for too long, at some point, people are going to start scratching their heads or having hard conversations with you. So how are you able to set things up where you can have that longer term view, and what is long term to you?
Well, long term to me is till I die. Unfortunately, it's not like that to my investors, and I don't expect it to be either. But I the way I lay it out to my investors is, if you want to judge us on a 3-year period, that's fine. I still think that's too short. 5 seems much more respectable to me, and 10 is probably the right amount of time, because 10 is kind of a full cycle. But 10 years is like unheard of in this business. People are buying stocks at 9 a.m. and selling them at 10 a.m. So for me, it's really a matter of trying to educate investors on why we think so long term, but then also our primary modus operandi for investing kind of allows us to be long term, because a lot of the things we invest in, or almost all the things we invest in now, are return of capital businesses. So we've kind of gone away from the basic Buffett framework of compounding your money over time, which of course makes sense. Like, I'm not a total mathematical dummy, I get it, but those things get too expensive. And right now, return of capital is super inexpensive, and it's all a function of interest rates. And so, one of the ways we get through it is we have a very high, quote unquote, dividend yield on our fund. And so our stocks might be down 20%, but if we get 12% in dividends, we're really only down 8%. And then we can kind of just keep clipping the coupons until the market comes around to seeing things the way that we do. So, that strategy is a little bit different. It's a little bit different than owning, whatever, Tesla at $400, because if that stock goes down to $100, you kind of don't have an anchor to anchor yourself to the valuation. And so, you might think it's going to be $100 for the next decade and just sell it when you're down 66% or whatever it might be. And we don't really have that. We anchor ourselves to cash flow. We anchor ourselves to stock repurchases. And so when our stocks get really cheap, they fundamentally look really cheap. Like, we had one stock in March. At the time, it was paying $3.12 in dividends, and the stock got down to, I think, $2. Like, that's well over 100% dividend yield. So, even after the fact, they cut the dividend 50%, but that's still a really good return. And so, that kind of helps us weather that. And then when you buy a stock at a 60% dividend yield, you never want to sell that stock. Like,
Right.
just own the thing forever, because
Right.
your rate of return is essentially 60%. So, so that's kind of how, we marry up the value and time differences, but it's a challenge. And at the end of the day, like, we have to, we have to pick the right clients. Like, that's the only thing that's really going to protect us, is having patient, long-term clients that believe in the things that we believe in. It's not to say we're going to be right. We might be wrong, but if you can't get to the finish line, you won't know.
That's really powerful stuff. I appreciate that a lot. And it's funny listening to you talk about that and having the pleasure of knowing you now for 14 years. It definitely feels to me like there is a connection between your personality and your approach to investing. Do you think that's a fair analysis?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm slow twitch. I'm a long-term thinker. I'm most comfortable kind of going against the crowd. So yeah, I mean, it fits a value investing philosophy, and a contrarian and a deep value philosophy specifically, to a T. So it was just a good marriage between me and investing and value investing.
And do you think that finding a good fit between your own personality and a career that you're going to be passionate about is something that's maybe a little bit underrated out there? Because I don't feel like I hear a lot of people talking about that.
I think it's so underrated. If there's there's two pieces of advice I have for my kids. The first one is, marry the right person, because that's key. If you don't do that, nothing else is going to work out. The second one is really find a career that you want to get up and pursue every morning, because then it's not, the goal is to not have a job. Like, that's the goal. So I really hope my kids like explore different things, figure out what they're really passionate about. I was just lucky that I found what I'm passionate about very early in life. Um, and it fits my personality, but I don't think that's the case for a lot of people. And, I think it's just key to happiness, because the second you have to set the alarm to get up and go do a job you despise, which I've done, don't get me
Been there,
wrong.
done that.
Been there, done that a lot of times. It's not a good way to live your life, but sometimes people have to do that. You have families to take care of, you have things to protect. And, we've had the advantage of, being able to reach that highest level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're not still at the bottom two levels looking for food and shelter. So, we are fortunate, but I would encourage at least young people to really spend the time to find what they're passionate about, and forget the money. Money doesn't matter. It's all the passion.
Yeah, it follows, right? That's one of the things that I like to say is money follows, it never leads. And if you're going
Yep.
after a job because you want to make a whole bunch of money, it's like you're probably in the wrong job. And it's
Yep.
probably going to lead in burnout at best.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned one other thing that this is probably not an angle you expect me to take here, but that's exactly why I want to go into it. So the first piece of advice you had to your children is to marry the right spouse. So what does the right spouse look like? So I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening to this who are not married. Kris Kelly, tell us about what someone should seek out in their spouse.
Well, mine is about 5'9", Hispanic, very dark complexion. That's what she looks like. But, from a personality standpoint, my wife is the polar opposite of me. I mean, it couldn't be more different than me and my wife. But it works for us because, she's an easy person, whereas I'm a difficult person. She is very happy to, make her whole life about family and kids, whereas that's, my top priority, but I also have, priority 2, 3, 4, and 5 that are extremely important to me. And her whole priority is really just family and kids. So she stays at home and takes care of her kids, and she's a great mom. She's a great wife. And then, she doesn't care about money. We've been very fortunate financially over the past probably decade or more. And we've just never even come close to spending our money because we do not care about material possessions, which has put us in a position to do silly things like for me to start my own business and do my own thing. And I understand, that a lot of people don't have that. If we had to have, a new car and a 10,000 square foot house and, vacation every year in Europe, like these things would not be possible. But, she's very comfortable in her own skin. She's very happy with what she does. And she lets me kind of pursue my crazy ideas. So that's her in a nutshell.
So when you say you're a difficult person, how has that actually helped you in your career? And but first of all, what do you mean by you're a difficult person?
Well, I don't think I'm a difficult person to anybody but my wife and my kids, because they're with me all the time. But, people that I generally, well, I'm hesitant to label all people like this, but because it's, me, you, it's a lot of our friends, but I think people that are always striving are just perpetually unhappy people. That's why you're constantly striving. Like, you're looking, for the next life fix, the next thing to trigger your brain and make you think that you're doing well, but it doesn't last long. As like you get that fix and like, man, they're like, there's no sitting back and just smoking a cigar and living your life on a beach. It might happen for a day or two, maybe a week, but that's about it. And then it's like, okay, on to the next thing. Which just, it never allows you to kind of sit back and I would say I'm almost never present. Like I never live in the present, which is extremely hard, I think, for somebody like my wife who's constantly in the present. And so that just makes me difficult. Wheels are always spinning. I'm always looking for the next thing to do. Um, but it's, she could have picked a more difficult spouse.
I would agree. I would agree with that. I think Aaron chose extremely wisely. I do love what you're saying about how difficult it is to live in the moment. And I think back at a time like it was 9 years ago or something, and I went go-kart racing, and it was just the greatest thing that I'd done in a long time. And I kept trying to think to myself, why did I like that so much? It was because I was 100% in the
Yeah.
moment. When I was going around the track, it was something new. It was something
Yep.
different. And you couldn't be thinking about anything else besides go-kart racing, as it happens
Yeah.
to be, as silly as that sounds. And I've come to appreciate, like, hey, as you know, I love college football. And when I'm watching those college football games, it's the same thing. It's like, holy cow, I actually am putting my brain at rest for a moment and just enjoying what I'm participating in. And that's pretty powerful thing to be able to finally get that break for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Over the past probably 7 or 8 years, I've been introduced to hunting from a buddy of mine. And so now I hunt twice a year. I archery hunt, and then I'm going to leave in 2 weeks to go rifle hunt for 7 days. And being out in the woods, alone by yourself, because we'll split up and you'll be by yourself for 4, 5, 6 hours of the day. Like, you have to be present, especially when you're a chicken like me and you see a big, bear print, or you see a bear in the woods. Like, it makes you present. So, for a couple weeks of the year now, when we're out in the woods and we go hunt, like, that's kind of been my one just connection with, real reality. And then it definitely brings me present, but unfortunately it's still only a couple weeks of the year.
Fair enough. Well, I see you're supporting the herd here, wearing a Wyoming hat. It's actually a bison that's supporting Wyoming, right? So I understand that you own a Seadoo dealership in Wyoming. How did that come to be?
How dare you? Not Sea-Doo, Polaris.
Oh, geez. Yeah, let's take that back. You wouldn't touch Seadoo with a 10-foot pole.
That's right. No Sea-Doo, it's a Polaris. I live up, this business is up in like farm and ranching and hunting country, so Sea-Doo does not exist. But
Well,
yeah,
we're confused in general. I think you meant to have a MuskOx hat on. It's a bison hat.
that's right.
I should have said Polaris. I said the other guy. So we're just confused in general. So hopefully you can clarify how the heck this came to be for us.
It's all good, man. So Aaron and I were up in Wyoming with our kids 3 years ago for the solar eclipse. In this little town of Lander, Wyoming, which is I think about 2 hours from Jackson Hole, was right in the path of totality for the eclipse. And we've got some great friends that live up there. So we went and stayed with them to watch the eclipse. And, I saw this little Polaris dealership in this town of 9,000 on the corner of Main Street. And I told my buddy, I was like, that's a pretty good little business. If that thing ever comes for sale, you let me know. And the owner called me like 2 weeks later and said, he's interested in selling because he owns a bunch of Ace Hardware stores, and this was kind of an outlier business for him. And this was right when I was leaving Janus, and because I've always wanted to be Warren Buffett, I thought I would buy a business, even though it's a fraction of the size of business he would buy, and I probably should have done a lot more diligence on it instead of just trying to be Warren Buffett and have a handshake agreement. But so I ended up buying that, and it's been a really good business. Shockingly, this year it's been an amazing business because everybody wants to get outside. But so they sell, Rangers, razors. We just started a rental business up there, and it's run by a family, about a family of three, and then a good friend of theirs. And so I don't have to do too much with it. It doesn't take a lot of my time, and it very similar to my public investments. It just kind of constantly shits out cash, which is all I really care about. And I leave the details to other people, but it's been a fun little business to own.
Well, I think that's super smart, is knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know, and investing. And there's people up there who know how to run a Polaris dealership very successfully, and you let them do their thing, right? I mean, I think that's how
Right.
this works.
Yep.
And ultimately it pays off when you're smart. And sometimes times like 2020 can be a good thing for investing as well. Well, Kris, I got two questions here for you before we let you go. You've been really generous with your time. So first question is, what's your biggest pet peeve?
Oh, I have a lot of pet peeves, as you know. um, Probably my biggest pet peeve is generally, I think, people acting like they've done a lot more than they really have. I don't like the self back slapping people. I don't like people who fool themselves into thinking that they're really good at what they do. And so, I don't know why it's such a big pet peeve for me. I guess because I'm the polar opposite, and I'm just never happy with myself and super hard on myself. And so when I see these people, it might also be this, like, a little bit of envy in that, I wouldn't mind spending a day slapping myself on the back, but generally it's very annoying to me.
Yeah, I agree. The sort of self-aggrandizing piece, like we can do without that. In fact, one of the one of our recent guests here on the Heard Has Spoken, Jake Siegel, you can go back and listen to that episode if you like. But he talks about something called the say to do ratio, which is really important to have a high say to do ratio. It's actually would be a low say to no, it would
Yeah,
be,
yeah, low.
yeah, it
Yep.
would be a low say to do ratio, which basically, like, if you say you're going to do something, do it. In this case, if you're saying that you've done something, have it be true, but no one wants to hear about you telling the world about how awesome you are and what an extremely high self-worth you have, whether that's mentally or financially or whatever. Like, people just don't want to hear that. And you've always been an extremely humble guy who's done great things, and one of many things I think that we can learn from you, Kris. So appreciate that. Along the journey here, final question for you is, what is the greatest piece of advice that you've received?
The greatest piece of advice that I've received. I would probably have to go back to, what we talked about earlier in, and this kind of comes from my introduction into investing in the career that I chose, which was, kind of a lot of my like career principles just come from Warren Buffett, as a lot of value investors do. And the greatest piece of advice, like I think, has given to me is again, just do something that you're passionate about and that you love, because then you're never working. Like, we spend so much time, um, quote unquote, working and trying to earn money and make a paycheck, that if you don't enjoy it, it statistically means you're not enjoying like 60-70% of your life, which is just asinine to me. Like, you have to figure a way out of that. So that would probably be the best advice I ever got, was from him, and he's passed it on to a lot of people. But really just find that thing you're passionate about and just do it, and figure out how you can do it every day, because it quite literally will change your life. Like by definition, it has to change your life. So it's pretty powerful, and I think it's something all, you know, I'm also one of those people. I don't think it's too late to change course, but definitively for anybody, college, high school, and below, like that's what kids should focus on. Like, find that passion.
Yeah, very, very well said. I think that's powerful advice. And Kris, really appreciate you being part of the MuskOx herd. We appreciate all your support for the business, and for, most importantly, getting people to get outside, do their thing outside and follow their passion. So really appreciate the time today. And thanks again for being with us here on The Herd Has Spoken. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. I think we've all got a tremendous amount to learn from Kris, both in terms of how to select a spouse, but also how to look at investing and really making any long-term decision, not just about dollars and cents or stocks and bonds, but how do you go about deciding where you're going to invest your time, energy, and effort in life. So thank you so much to Kris Kelly for sharing your time, your information, and knowledge with the MuskOx herd. And speaking of MuskOx, if you'd like to learn more about the brand, please visit gomuskox.com. Go ahead and get yourself some fantastic gear, and you can rest easy knowing that for every $100 purchase that is made at MuskOx, $10 is donated for wildlife conservation through our partners at the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center. Thanks for listening. Please go ahead and rate, review, and subscribe to The Herd Has Spoken. Those things really make a big difference to our show, and we really appreciate everything that you're doing to help us become better as well. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm your host, Bradley Hoos.